We're never getting off the air, vibes. We are back on one more time. And for a long night, too. It is the AHLPSN This Week show tonight for however long we can talk. And then right after that, the All-Star game, or games. Hopefully tonight we'll get a chance to see a couple of All-Star games. That'd be fun to watch. Again, 6-on-6. You've seen the teams that have been picked. And hopefully we will be able to see everybody play tonight and get to see all those great players. Meanwhile, there's playoffs coming up. We're going to be talking about that here in just a second. Hi, everyone. Again, T. Sibs with you along with Vibes, and we'll have Ryan on shortly. And we'll be going to be talking about everything we saw last night and what's coming up for the coming week of the first round of the playoffs. Vibes, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. I feel like I live here. Like, not where I am, because I actually do live here, but like on the air, I feel like I live on the air.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I assume that you probably do too.
Oh, I feel like I've been behind this computer in this office for several days in a row. My wife eventually is not going to recognize me and probably shoot me dead at some point. So yeah, good for her.
Not so much for you.
Not so much for me. We're going to try and get some guys on here. We're going to have Deer Hunter, the San Diego Gulls management over there. He's going to talk to us tonight about that incredible win streak that's going on right now. And, talk to him about what that means as far as playoffs are concerned. And it's going to be fun to talk to him a little bit, and we heard a little bit from him last night after the game. That's kind of what we talked a little bit about last night too, Vibes. You don't want a win streak to lose, but it does drain you. And we heard and he wasn't even playing the game. Well, actually, no, he was playing the game. I think he played both games last night. They both went into overtime for the Gulls. They won them both, and wound up winning the Western Pacific. But it takes a lot out of you when you're trying to keep a winning streak going and aiming for first place and trying to keep off all the other guys in their division who don't give them a break ever.
Yeah, he sounded like he went 3 rounds with a 20-year-old cheerleader. That's what he sounded like after when he got in here. So definitely took a lot out of him.
It's now the time where you've got to start thinking about playoff lines. And I just want to get a quick sense from you. Regular season is over. We're hitting playoffs now. You've been in this place before. You've managed teams that have gone there. We know what you did with the Wolves several years back. What happens in round one? What are you thinking about initially with your matchup? Are you looking to really try and work the lines and figure out what the chess play is going to be between what lines going up against who, or what comes to mind first to you when you start thinking about a first round matchup?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to work the matchups. With me, it was a really big thing that we got the home ice advantage, which we did through round one. It was something that I really wanted because, depending on what they do, I'll counter it with the way that I want to counter it. I guess at the same time, the home ice advantage didn't really mean a whole hell of a lot because if I was to show my line first, I still know what I would do, you know what I mean, and then force them to counter it. So, you're thinking about matchups. You also have it in the back of your head that you don't want to totally shit the bed here, right? You don't want to totally make the show just to find yourself out after round one.
Right.
So, there's a few things that are running through your mind, in terms of that, not shitting the bed, and then also matchups. And you're trying not to look ahead, but at the same time, it's kind of hard not to, So, but hey, at the end of the day, you take it one game at a time, one series at a time, and you move from there.
And after something like the last couple of nights of the league, and the fact that some of these teams had to work hard to get in there, a lot of trying to get guys to commit to games and be available. That alone, we've talked about that, getting guys to play, getting ECUs in. Now you got to change gears, and it's a different mindset for the playoffs than it is for the regular season, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with the whole ECU situation. I could speak for my team in particular. We used a lot of ECUs during the regular season, but come playoff time, should that situation arise, there's a lot of guys who I did look to during the regular season whom I will not be able to look to the postseason. So,
Right.
I kind of did my personal assessment of who's available and who's eligible for the ECU. Should that situation arise, I actually went out and I contacted each and every single available ECU, A status training camp player,
Hmm.
just to touch base with them and make sure I knew what their status was, if they were interested, if they'd be around. So, went through that process and feeling pretty good in that department. Unfortunately, it's an area that I feel I have to cover because of the way things went for me in the regular season. So,
Joining us now on the show, Ryan is now here. And Ryan, we talked a little bit about last night, a little bit about what what has to happen now with GMs and what they start thinking about after trying hard and vibes. What was the final tally of TCs that you used this season in regular season?
79.
Almost won a game. Just about won a game.
That's staggering.
It's
but
insane.
Not shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, and a bad problem all around. And in some ways, vibes, it's it's a little easier to. Well, I don't know if it's any easier, quite honestly, because this is the playoffs. It might be a little easier because guys want to play now because they're in the playoffs. They may want to, try and win something now. But I don't know if it's any easier. Maybe it's a hair easier than regular season. What's your take on it?
You would think that, but for me, it's actually gotten harder, especially with the beta coming out and everything. And, you got guys who, believe it or not, have very little to no interest in even continuing on with the season. They all got wrapped up in the beta. And you would think that a team, towards I'm talking about us. Obviously, I can only really speak for myself and our team. You would think the guys would be a little bit more into it and a little bit more invested and gung-ho about, moving into the playoffs. And it just doesn't really seem to be the case, at least not for us.
And, for the players, it's really been spotty this season about finding players who are going to stick with you all season long, who have committed to playing in the league, and now you're in the playoffs and you're hoping that you have all the guys that you've been counting on all season to get you there. You've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, Vibes, about how, my team's doing well, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to really compete come the playoffs because I know guys are going to be gone come August, and I could wind up in the semis or in the finals, and I don't know who the hell I'm going to have left.
Right. Yeah, and it does seem to be an issue that is kind of playing out that way. I've spoken a lot about how confident I am in my team, and I'm still confident in the players that I have. As long as they show up, but that's a big if, really, especially with my team. And I'm assuming that I'd like to assume, and I'd have to assume that I'm not the only team, but with my team in particular, it's really up in the air, and it's a huge question mark, and I really don't know what's going to happen moving forward into the first round, and God willing, past that, I don't know what it's going to be like in terms of availability.
Ryan, we're hearing rumblings, and I haven't really paid attention to much what's going on in the NHL, but we're hearing it's actually maybe even worse up there with players not being available and all sorts of issues with getting games going even.
The forfeits last week were ridiculous. There were maybe, I want to say if you weren't in the playoffs, your team actually showing up is maybe like a 25% chance. I mean, I think we had, let me count it. We had 4 forfeit games last week, and the last week 4 out of 10.
Wow.
And we're fighting for a playoff spot come the end. Everybody else in the division is too. It really sucked because all those games are penciled in as wins, and it cuts down from 10 games to catch up to really realistically 5 or 4 because everyone's getting those wins. The forfeits last week were ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the same way in AHL. I hadn't really looked to see. However, I saw last night there were a couple of games that were forfeited.
Right.
It's a real problem, and it makes me wonder whether the manager should be reprimanded for that. I mean, it's not having your team show up once, fine, but having the entire week, like, come on, like, at least get ECUs or something to have guys try, from the CHL level to try and maybe have an audition for next season, play an actual AHL game. It's ridiculous. There's really no excuse other than straight up laziness.
It's a lack of effort. That's just the bottom line. It's a lack of effort. It's teams that are, no longer in it. And I mean, I guess I understand, kind of. I mean, not really because they've never been in that situation, but, I would assume that you get a little bit of, just whatever about things, considering the fact that you're out of it. And at the end of the day, it is a lack of effort, because if you really wanted to field those ECUs, you'd get them, because I know that I have. So,
yeah, I think we had for this week, I believe, if I'm counting my my score sheet properly, I believe we had 16 forfeits this week, and 6 of them alone coming from Wilkes-Barre. I know that there is there is at least one action in the Action Center complaint about lack of management, that kind of deal, for at least one of the games. Again, I don't want to take a lot of time on this. Vibes and I talked before the show saying, yeah, we want to complain, but we want to talk about the playoffs. But I do want to take just a couple of minutes to quickly just talk about this issue alone. I think I said it in the shout box. We've seen a lot of people in the last couple of days say that in the shout box. The forfeits and the teams not showing up, players not showing up. The excuse of it being the summer season is bullshit. As far as anyone who has a responsible bone in your body, you don't use that as an excuse. It's just lack of as the EP is saying here, lack of integrity. Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. And I'm sure you guys feel a lot the same. Again, vibes, 78, 79 ECUs didn't have to forfeit one game. So that if you've got the will to do it, it can be done, even in really bad situations. If you don't give a damn, then you get forfeit after forfeit. And I don't care what kind of issues you may be having within your organization. To me, Ryan, if I look at one team who's been forfeiting a lot, and I look at what Vibes is doing for Manitoba, I'm saying it's the person. It's, maybe his TC roster too. I don't know, but you can't blame 20, 30 guys on your TC as opposed to, Vibes being able to get the players to play. You got to say it's the management just not doing what they're supposed to do.
No question. There's no excuse. I mean, prospects can play. And in the AHL, it's a little bit easier because prospects can play. So your entire, TC list is eligible to play. NHL, I know it's a little bit more difficult because it's only amateurs who are able to play. Maybe there's some guys playing at night, you know what I'm saying? But
right.
AHL, there's really no excuse. I was looking, they actually did ban 2 of the managers on Wilkes-Barre Scranton as a result.
They did ban them, okay.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit of justice, but even still, you can't get those games back.
Yeah, it is. And then last night, Vibes and I are calling these games. We had a great game, early game, Lehigh Valley, Bridgeport, into overtime. Lehigh Valley wins it. And then before their game even really, it got going, but even before anything was really progressing in that game, we find out that there's a forfeit from Albany, giving Bridgeport the win. I mean, how anticlimactic is that? It's, this is not the way things should be happening, and unfortunately, we just have too many people who, who are having a problem. GM's having problems finding people. Too many guys last minute saying they're not available. It's part management. It's part player responsibility not happening. It is, and it's been a mess. And I applaud anybody who's been able to put together a really good team. And we have playoffs. We have quite a bunch of teams who have been able to do really well despite all of this. So. That's all I have to say about it. I'm hoping that there is, and I don't know how you guys feel about it. I'll leave that as the last question. I'm hoping there's some retribution to the management folks who basically just gave up the last week or two. What's your feeling on it, Ryan? What do you think should happen?
I mean, either depending on how many games are forfeited, I think it should vary. From a game suspensions to no management list to 3-season ban, which we saw with the two managers in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. As I was saying, like maybe 2 games is maybe a lower, but, forfeiting 6, it's a 3-season ban. I don't know if that's the right way to go about doing it. It's kind of a gray kind of system, but that's what I would envision.
Vibes, what do you think should happen with some of these management folks?
I think at the very least, they should not be invited back to be management. I mean, honestly, like really, if you're forfeiting that many games, and let's just be honest, it's a lack of effort. It's because you didn't feel like finding the ECUs, because I know for a fact that you could have. The rosters are really big. The training camp rosters, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. But if you do your job and you allot the time to find those ECUs and you take pride in what you do, you can absolutely find them. So, I mean, they should not be invited back to be management. And honestly, you shouldn't even need the league to put you on a no management list or anything like that. You should put yourself on the no management list, because you're not cut out to be a manager, so don't do it no more.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan. If you had something.
There's no excuse. I mean, for the Albany, forfeit, there's 65 guys on their TC roster. I'm sure it's not that difficult to find 6 guys willing to play, or even the guys on the team willing to put in a little bit more time. You know what I'm saying? It's,
right.
How?
That's a good question, and I know Nature. I played with him for a while this season, and he tries hard, but it is just, maybe he needed more help for what he was doing. Maybe he wasn't getting enough to really say, yeah, I'm able to handle this and whatnot. But it is what it is, and regular season over now. Hopefully something will go on, and we'll be able to, see something happen with some of these guys who weren't able to really handle the job in the end. And again, we'll hear more about that as the off season develops. Let's get on to actual discussion about the playoffs, because again, we saw some pretty good races this season, and we'll start with the Eastern Atlantic. We've got 4 teams in there that 3 of them played really hard and looked like they were juggling position in a horse race, basically, for a good 2/3 of the season. With Lehigh Valley thinking they were going to get in there, and quite honestly, I kind of figured they would too as well. But Hartford held on, even though they hit a bad stride. Springfield hit a win streak, and Bridgeport got hot at the right time as well. But they still all have to go through Hershey. I still think that's the road, no matter what. No matter what I said last week, I think Hershey is more beatable. But I still feel, Vibes, that that's the place you have to go through in the end. And Bridgeport can be a problem for the Bears, but they have to realize that this is playoff time now, and Bob Swagger and Moose and Maddens, they're going to get their team together and be ready now, because this is what Bob plays for.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd say if there was a team out in the Eastern Atlantic that was capable of beating Hershey, it probably would be the Sound Tigers. I don't think I see it happening, but if there was going to team, it would be them. I think that the Sound Tigers have the capability of pushing Hershey to a 6 game. And should they be able to accomplish that, it goes to a game 7. And as you and everyone else well knows, anything could really happen in a game 7. So, I mean, if a team was going to oust Hershey, it would be the Sound Tigers. Don't think it happens, but I don't know. We'll see.
I gotta agree with that. I mean, Bridgeport has a couple of real, AHL veterans who, been through it before. Sunshine, you have Robo, yeah. Players like that, Timebot as well.
Mm-hmm.
If they match up well, I think that they can put a little bit of pressure on Hershey and make it hard. I know Headhunter's capable of stealing games. It'll be an interesting series to watch for sure.
And so far this season, as we take a look at the matchup for the playoffs, the preview provided by LeagueGaming.com, the Bears have a 3-2 edge in this season. They didn't really handle anybody incredibly well this year, so Bridgeport still getting a couple of wins against a good, tough Hershey team. Interesting, not a lot of shots on goal for 5 games. I'm sorry, on average, but total shots there, I guess it's about average 13 and 15. But, time on attack, again, Hershey getting the bulk of it. Bridgeport taking a few more penalties. Face-offs are about even. The time on attack, I know we've talked about this before, Vibes, how much credence you put into it or don't put into it. But I feel like Hershey is this stat means something for them because we know that they don't just go in and, make a quick shot and come out of the zone. They set up. They try and make something happen. So time on attack means that they're running their offense the way they like to. And Bridgeport needs to probably, do some of the basic things you need to do on defense. Keep them to the outside. Don't allow the cross crease. Maybe jam up the middle a little bit. And give Headhunter the ability to make the head-on save. I think, to me, that gives Bridgeport a chance to win a game against Hershey. But again, their defense has been flying all season long, and they've been a pretty solid group. They're one of the better lines. One full line in the All-Star grouping on the East, and so I think matchups are going to be a bit tough for Bridgeport. But they've got the goaltending, like you said. They've got Headhunter in net as one of their guys, and that could be enough of an edge for them.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, Hershey, they score a lot of their goals off of the cycle. So, if you could limit their zone time and their ability to control the corners, then I think maybe you give yourself a chance. On the flip side, Bridgeport seems to be really good at scoring a lot of goals from outside the hash marks in between the face-off dots. So, it's kind of a tale of 2 different offenses and styles of play. But, if you could limit the time that Hershey spends on the cycle, then maybe Bridgeport has a chance here.
What are you seeing as the tone of this game, Ryan, with these 2 clubs? Of course, Hershey. Actually, the interesting thing is for both of them is they both kind of have a core of players back from last season. You mentioned Robo and Sunshine. 2 players who've played together, who know each other pretty well, and have done that for a couple of seasons now. That could be an added advantage for Bridgeport. But again, the Bears have a good core as well. And, I don't know if that experience together is going to be that much different between the 2 teams. What do you see as a valid point of reference for where this series is going?
I mean, to be honest, when I look at this series, I see Hershey really dictating the pace, and the way that Bridgeport's going to score is they're going to, counterattack on those mistakes. I think they'll have to sit back in a cycle and try to keep them out of the middle and kind of trap, and then capitalize on mistakes. Although I don't think that's going to be very easy to do. You have Moose in net, and I don't have to talk about how good he is. He's a great player. It's kind of the way I see it going. If Bridgeport can match up well, then maybe they have a chance to snag a couple of games. However, make no mistake, I think Hershey's the clear favorite in the series.
Yeah, I think Hershey's defense, their goaltending, of course, with Moose. I mean, we talked about Headhunter on the other side, but Moose is Moose, and again, Hershey wins his games. They win this. I don't remember what I picked. I certainly picked Hershey in this one, and my picks are they'll be on the site. You could go see them if you want to. Now you see all the voting for this game, but then you don't. If you scroll down further, you can see what people voted on. So I think Hershey has this one. I just think their defense and their goaltending is too much. Vibes.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that for sure.
Other matchup in the East is the Springfield Thunderbirds, who have been playing very well of late. They actually have a 3-1 lead on the Hartford Wolfpack in this series this season. And Springfield on a 6-game winning streak, Hartford a 2-game losing streak. So, again, a couple of things I'm thinking in favor of Springfield. And we talked a lot about Hershey, certainly several weeks back when they were playing incredibly well. But, I'm not convinced again now that they're ready for the playoffs. I haven't seen them play incredibly good hockey that lets me believe that Springfield can't take them in this series. Again, these teams are both very talented, but I just think the way Springfield has been playing of late, I think they've shown that they can handle the Wolfpack. The lineups on both of these teams, I think favor Springfield in the long run. Hartford held on to second place, but quite honestly, Springfield had second place and had been playing a lot better hockey of late. 7-2-1 in the last 10 games. Very good in one-goal games. I think the thing with Springfield is you have to feel like the momentum is going their way. And, I think Ice Block has done a good job of getting these guys back on track again. Again, it's a broken record from me, but Bacon Weave is a solid goaltender, has played well down the stretch. I think that's a big part of what their success is. They've got McGann as the other goaltender who played well in the playoffs last season. Woe is me and Kepler on defense as part of the grouping there. Bry as well back there on defense. I'm not overly convinced Springfield's offense is better than Hartford's. I think maybe Hartford might have the edge there, but I'm a defensive person, Vibes, and I gotta believe Springfield takes this series, and it may go 6 or 7, but I have Springfield taking it probably in 6.
Yeah, well, Springfield can be kind of a dangerous team. They can score off the rush, which is it's definitely a tool that a team could use in a situation like this. I feel like Hartford is, they're the 2 seed in this division. How much of that is really warranted, I don't know. They had that really amazing streak there, but in this season series between these two teams, I mean, Springfield has actually won it. They've outscored Hartford. They've managed to get more shots than Hartford. And the time on attack has been, pretty close. So, you would have to say that the offense could go in favor of the Thunderbirds here. I don't know if are we picking here? I don't think we're picking just yet, right? But I guess I'll leave that until we do pick. But
Yeah.
this can go either way, really. This series, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen here. Don't think Hartford is as good of a team as some people have led them to, led to believe, and the fact that they're a number 2 seed doesn't really hold much weight with me. So.
I mean, I think that to be quite honest, I think in the Atlantic, the 2, 3, and 4 seeds are pretty much interchangeable. There's not too much difference between them. And maybe even the 5 seed to be quite, Lehigh Valley's not a bad team. But I do like a couple of things about Hartford. I know one of the huge issues is they're going to lose Hockey Town's finest. He had a terrific season so far. However, he hasn't been around for like the last couple of weeks, so they need to get someone up to replace him come playoff time, which is going to be a huge blow to their offense. However, they do have a couple players I like. I think Navy Nick is a legit goalie.
Mm-hmm.
He has like an 81 save percentage this season, which isn't bad at all. And Craig D as a backup, if he's hot, he can steal games. I've seen him do it before. Playing for the Rangers, he'd come up in ECU and he'd be tremendous. So I think goaltending could be an advantage maybe for Hartford. It all rests upon Craig playing very well. A couple of the defensemen I really like too. I like T. Saints as a lefty. I think he's legit. Played with him a couple times as well through the season. And then Manbear Pig's not a bad player. Two Ruff is pretty good. La Rocha's a solid player. I think they have a couple defensemen that have, proved that they can play. We'll see if they show up in the playoffs. I think the offense up front is what's going to kill Hartford. Losing Hockey Town, I think, is going to be huge. It'll be interesting to see if they can pick up the slack, for that loss.
Yeah, a couple of games that we saw this season with Hartford, right around when they were having their streak or towards the end of it, the one thing that I did notice about them is I think their goaltending has kept them in games. They were on the verge of, and I know even with Premier, I think we talked about it with him a little bit. This team was making mistakes, maybe getting away with it a little bit. When that streak stopped and they started losing a few games, it was the fact that they weren't getting away with making mistakes, that teams were starting to make them pay for it. And that's the part of the issue that I have with Hartford. I've watched their defense. At times it does an adequate job, and at times people are getting past them. And Navy Nick and their goaltending crew have had to make spectacular saves all too often, and that's not a recipe for a team being successful. And if they're going to have a chance, that defense for Hartford has to really shore up. So I mean, that's where I'm seeing it happen for them, if it happens.
Yeah, you mean that the bottom fell out once Peter Pan started shooting blanks and stopped spraying his fairy dust all over the place, is what you mean, right? Yeah.
No, that's really not what I'm saying.
I'd agree with that.
Okay. We'll move on to the next division, and we'll talk about the Eastern North. And the first matchup I want to talk about is the Marlies and the Utica Comets. The Marlies with a 3-1 lead in this series. Shots are relatively even. Time on attack relatively even. A little bit more physicality out of the Marlies in this one with more hits. But you look at the stats all the way down, and Utica staying with them pretty even on most of it. It's it's a matter of opportunities, I guess, but the Utica Comets are the team that I felt like is a team that could surprise and could knock a seed off ahead of them. From the number 4 slot against this Marley team that has a great all-around team, including 2 number 1 goaltenders on that squad. The Comets are going to have to play above and beyond, well beyond what they've been doing. But these stats for the season point to the idea that they're sticking with Toronto. They have played with them. They haven't been, they haven't lost a lot of time on attack to them. They're getting their opportunities. it just not as cohesive as it was for Toronto. So there again, what is Utica going to have to do, Ryan, to try and cut down maybe on the opportunities, or is it about capitalizing on what Toronto gives them in this series? Did I lose you guys?
I'm here. Ryan, are you
Did you hear
okay?
me? Yeah.
There you are.
Sorry, I put it on mute for a second. Forgot to turn it off. Anyway, I was gonna say the goaltending. I think is they're gonna have to take advantage of the opportunities they do get, but even still, it's gonna be difficult with the goaltending that Toronto has with It's a Watermelon and Mello. And then I don't think they're gonna get all that many opportunities. Looking at some of the defensemen they have, you have Philly's MVP and the Berger set.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very difficult to beat. They don't let much through.
Right.
And even looking down the roster, it's they still have some very capable defensemen. I was looking over the last 3 weeks after the trade deadline. Toronto's played Utica twice. First in week 7, Toronto won 6-4, and then I think yesterday they stomped Utica 8-2. So, I mean, it looks like, especially in that first game, they were able to put some goals in, but even still, in the last 2 games, they've given up 14 goals to Toronto. I think Utica's got to really focus in on limiting Toronto's goals and trying to keep the game close.
Vibes, I think you may have been involved in a few of these, but we've been playing a lot of club and other games with Philly's MVP and Berger and on defense. I want to talk about them first, but yeah, for what Ryan said, these guys are a hell of a combination, and they obviously have a great chemistry that has been a big part of why the Marlies don't go on losing streaks. What these guys play with whoever on offense, and they've got 3 great lines up there, but this kind of defensive pairing and a goaltending tandem, again, very similar to what we saw in Stockton last season. You're going to really have to have an amazing game to beat that defensive pairing, and either one of those goaltenders, Mello or Mellon. And then, Dirty D's, we've gotten to know a little bit too as well, playing a lot of club games with him. Young guy who has, for his age, has a pretty good, solid maturity level on him, and that makes for a good teammate as well. And so I've been impressed with getting to know the Marlies a little bit more, a lot more than I had before. They've got good leadership along with good players, and I think that's a real mountain to climb for Utica.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, you mentioned Philly and you mentioned Berger, also known as the Philly Burger.
Yeah.
And they're a tandem that's been together for a while, and they're really good at shutting opposing offenses down. I actually had the privilege of going against them once this season, and they beat us 2-1, I believe, in that game. They're a really good pair, but they're not the only pairing that the Marlies have. They have Corey back there, and then they also have Davy Donuts and, to a lesser degree, Rippin and Stevens, who are serviceable defensemen. But I mean, they have a really good set of 4 defensemen on the back end, and it definitely adds to that team and allows that offense to be what they are. This season series was kind of close, though. I mean, I think Ryan threw a score out there. I'm not exactly how correct it was. I mean, yes, the Toronto Marlies took the series 3-1, but I mean, the games were 4-3, 3-2, 6-4, and then a blowout of 8-2. So with the exception of that last game there, I mean, the series was pretty close. I mean, you look at the stat lines, the offensive stat lines, and, shots were pretty close and time on attack was pretty close, maybe a slight advantage to the Marlies. But, I mean, overall, this season series, as far as the regular season was concerned, was fairly even. And, I don't think that we should overlook Utica in this series, but kind of like you alluded to, Sibs, the defense of Toronto could maybe play a difference here.
let's move on to the next series. Again, within that Eastern North, you've got the Sens and the Crunch. This is pretty much the matchup we figured we'd wind up seeing. The 2 and 3. You know, these guys have been 2 and 3 for most of the season. They're very comparable teams. We were, back at the trade deadline, guys, we were really surprised at all the moves that the Sens made, and in the end, Kastam has done a heck of a job with getting these guys ready, and everybody's been gelling really well. They didn't seem like they missed much of a beat after that trade deadline work, and didn't see them drop off. Their records every week still basically remain the same, and they've been a pretty successful team. They've beaten the Crunch 3 out of 5 games in this series, and you look at the numbers, and if you didn't see the goal, if you didn't see where this series went, how many goals were scored, perhaps you might think that Syracuse had the better of it. A slight lead on overall shots, time on attack close to almost doubled. Taking a lot more penalty minutes for Syracuse in this one, and that's certainly an issue. But you'd think that the Crunch might have had the better of them. But the Sens, again, went through some turmoil, lost their GM. One of those rare opportunities where you see that happen, but these guys were able to pick it up and continue to run with it. And, that's the kind of thing that you wonder how a team is going to react when their GM is suspended, and what's the new guy going to do? The new guy came in and made a bunch of moves, so it makes you even wonder further, okay, what are these guys going to be able to do now? Are they going to lose chemistry? It hasn't happened for Binghamton. They are continuing to play well, win games, and I don't know if they have a better shot of beating Toronto should they beat them in the final of that division, but I kind of like the Sens and what they've been able to do so far. I think if you go through that kind of, those kinds of issues and you come out of it the other end in the playoffs, you got to feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I mean, the Sens proved a lot of us wrong. They made a lot of moves at the deadline, and I mean, I am one person in particular who was, rather critical of it. I didn't really, I felt like there were a lot of moves for no real reason, but it seems to have worked out for them. In this particular series, they did take the season series, as you mentioned. The stat line is pretty close, with the exception of time on attack, which makes kind of makes sense considering the type of team that Syracuse is. Syracuse likes to, they generate a lot of their offense from back behind the net, especially on that Lobo Dangles line. Mm-hmm. This series is one of those series that, I mean, it could. It could go either way, and as you mentioned, Binghamton did. They held it together coming down the stretch here, and arguably maybe even made themselves better. So the games earlier on in the season, which were kind of split, it actually looks as though Syracuse won the earlier half. Mm-hmm. Of the season, and then in the later half, it seems that Binghamton won. So, those moves being around the deadline, and the fact that Binghamton has had some success here towards the end of the season against Syracuse, maybe that comes into play. So this is another it's another tight series, which you could probably make a case in either direction.
I was definitely one of those guys that was very critical of Binghamton. Come the trade deadline, I thought that they were ready for a collapse after, especially losing Vesna, who had been having a Vesna-style season. A lot of moves too. I mean, but they've brought in some very good players. Age Squad has done pretty well for Binghamton.
Yep.
Barikoff, another key addition. It looks like they've really gelled together. I think this series here is going to be probably one of the closest, and it's definitely one of the ones I can see going to 7 games. Both teams have a lot of talent up front. Obviously, you have Lobo Dangles, who leads the league in points right now, put up a lot of goals with his line. There's a lot of talent. I could see it going 7. Defense for Syracuse is pretty good. They have Tenor, who I think is one of the better players in the league. You have Sinjism, who's a good player. Yeah.
It's the question of this season, how often is Lobo going to play in these games? And by the time he got to Hershey last season in the playoffs, in the Eastern Conference Finals, he got one game in that series, and so I think they were looking to hold him back and try and steal a couple of games and then get him in late in the last 2 to try and take that series out from underneath Hershey in the last 2. Do you use Lobo that way? Do you try and secure some wins? Maybe on the road you play Lobo so that you're going to be the first one who has to get a lineup in. You put him in those games and you get him as much as you can in the games early, and then worry about Game 7 when you get to it.
Well, you have to win the earlier games in order to get to Game 7, right?
Right.
There is no Game 7 without winning the games that you need to win prior to that. So, you need to act accordingly as far as that's concerned.
I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure what their plans are for him, but it'll be interesting to see where they play Lobo. If you've got the ability, and maybe if you're the Sens, maybe you throw the big lines out there early so that that there's a good chance you're going to wind up seeing Lobo, because they need to try and match up. It might be an advantage for Binghamton, Ryan, to have to put in their lines early when they're on the road, so that you put in your better lines. You're thinking Syracuse might have to match up with Lobo.
For sure. And they've done a pretty good job containing here. I'm looking at one of the games that they played recently. They had the Lobo line out there, and Barikov and Robster for Binghamton did a great job containing him, holding him only to 1 point in that entire game. That being said, I mean, it looks like Syracuse had most of the time on attack, about 5 minutes to 3. However, they were able to contain and hold them, off the board. I think they'll have to do the same thing. You got to throw out, I think, your top quality defenseman to slow them down. But if you can do that, it's a big step forward for Binghamton.
Let's move on to the division that Vibes is going to have to deal with, and talk about the Western Central. And the first matchup we'll look at here are the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Cleveland Monsters. They've played each other officially 4 times, a 2-2 split in this. And as we look at the numbers here, one of the things we want to talk about is the fact that Siege, one of their defensemen, an all-star that has been voted in for this season, will not be available to them this week, as Siege will be on the road and had to go on IR because of that. A lot of course, shoutbox bullshit speculation about it. But I've actually talked to Siege. People do go on the road for work. We all have to do it at some point for one reason or another. And unfortunately, it's the timing of it would not work out well with what's going on with the playoffs. So they're going to have to go without one of their better defensemen. But I know that they've used Zogood down in TC, and I believe they might be bringing him up to play defense. He has been a defenseman in this league. He was with me in Hershey in season 1. They're going to probably have to bring someone else up as well, because I believe Shirk now is also another defenseman that they are going to wind up losing. So, well, I tell you what, you lose players in this game, Vibes, as you head to the playoffs. That's big, but when you lose 2 defensemen, that is, and they were a pair that were trying to play together more often. It didn't work out that way during the season. But now they're going to have neither one of those defensemen on their squad. Does this make Cleveland a team that is really susceptible to a Griffins team that's been scrapping all year long?
I would think that they were susceptible to losing to the Griffins, even with them in. I mean, I don't really see this as a huge loss. Sieg in particular, that's a player. She was playing way over her head. Decent player, but not nearly as good as the record from this season indicates. I don't really see it as that big of a loss. Sure, it could hurt them a little bit in terms of chemistry and things like that. But this is a Monsters team that, like I said weeks ago, and I mean I wasn't joking when I said that their carriage is turning back into a pumpkin, because it is, and it has been, and this is all just part of the process, if you would ask me.
What do you think the loss of these defensemen means, Ryan, to Cleveland? Whether you think that they are as good as maybe some people might think or not, I think it's hard to lose a third of your defense all of a sudden as you're about ready to go into the first round.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to make it very tough. One of the issues with Zoga is that he's registered as a forward, so he can't come up and play, 2 games for them in the series. He can only play 1,
right?
Meaning that you're going to have to get like 4 separate guys in order. If it goes to 6 games, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the TC. I know that up front, I think Cleveland has one of the better forward, top 3 lines. They have a lot of really great players. However, their defense is definitely going to be susceptible here. T-Ball's a great player. Adam D can play as well. And Troy's done well all season. However, I think the ones who are going to have to clean up the mess are definitely have to be the goaltenders. Maximus has, played well all season, and SW Bobcats as well has been playing well of late. We'll see if they can react to. I'm sure there will be, with TCs coming up to play, an increased workload in terms of shots. This Griffins team is also super dangerous. They have a lot of really, really good players. I like Kuzduke. I think he's a terrific player.
Nope, we lost you there for a second.
DeFrance.
Oh, there you go. You're back. Yep.
Okay. I was going to say Killer Scotch and DeFrance are also two really good forwards who can really bring it, put a lot of pressure on the defense and goaltending.
Yeah, Duke's a guy that I saw a couple of seasons back as he was available for the Hershey Bears, I believe on the TC roster, and you could see that he had a ton of talent, knew that he was going to wind up being part of a winning team, a playoff team at some point. He's played incredibly well this season. 27 goals, 40 assists, a plus 18, 14, 10, and 3 on the season. And, some of the other guys in this team, Just Saying has been around. He was with Bakersfield a couple of seasons back when he helped Broski get all the way to the semis in that one. The Griffins have not only talent but experience in this, and I think that's a big part of what's going to help them in this series. And I don't think being a number 1 seed and being a number 4 seed in this league also means an awful lot. And I think there's enough talent on the Griffins to give them an opportunity to do something here. Now, having said that, everyone knows that I'm a Cleveland fanboy, so I do like that squad because they've been able to put it back together again this season and get into the playoffs again. But that Freeze wants to do this. He wants to show. Look, we had the talent last season. We still have a lot of it now. We brought Derms back, and we're making a run for it. But I still feel like losing a couple of defensemen this late in the season is a big issue.
Herms wants to respond. I'm assuming you want to respond to me, Herms. Is that it?
He can respond in the shout box.
I'm not surprised, Herms, since all you do is yap. All you do is run your mouth.
Well, he'll respond in the YouTube box, and we'll leave it at that as we move on. But another thing I agree with Ryan. I like Maximus and Bobcats to me. I'm a big fan of T-Bod and Alex Clearer. I like them both, but I would have to give a good advantage to Cleveland in the goaltending. If Alex can play really well in this one, and T-Bod is his steady self, they may have a chance, but they actually need both those guys to step it up even more to really have a good shot at beating Cleveland. It's possible. This one to me is kind of tough to call. We'll get to it later, but it is. I think it's a better 1-4 matchup, one of the better 1-4 matchups that we've seen in a while, and so it'll be fun to watch this one. The other matchup is the Iowa Wild and the Manitoba Moose. Again, 2-2, the season series between these two. The Moose, boy, look at that total shots on goal, absolutely dominating in that area. Time on attack certainly is better. Penalty minutes, the Wild have taken a lot more. This looks like, again, you would think the Moose had control of most of these games. I'm gonna let Ryan talk to this a little bit. We've heard from Vibes all season long about what he's had to do to put out a competitive team, and that one that's actually done incredibly well in this division. But now what Vibes isn't going to get now is a break. He's not going to have a game or two here where if he doesn't have guys showing up, he's going to catch a break because he might play, he might play a lesser team. He might play Rochester or Rockford. It's not that way in the playoffs. This Wild team is very talented, and so Vibes. I think for Vibes, he really needs players to show up at this point in order for him to have a chance.
For sure, I think this series is not going to be easy. I think one of the things that separates Iowa is I think up front, especially at the center position, they are stacked. Crocodile's one of my boys. He's terrific defensive center. Lee Richter's terrific as well, and then Roller Pig is good as well. I think that's what the face-off that's going to be really hard all series. Not saying that Manitoba doesn't have a good center, core. However, I think it's going to be a hard matchup either way. And then goaltending doesn't get very easy for Iowa either. You have B. Nice and Rick Stoneman, who's really broke out this season. He's played extremely well. Just not going to be easy. Looking at Manitoba, though, I mean, as much as I love to give Vibes credit, and it's, kills me to do, he's put together a good team here. I mean, up front, they have a couple really dynamic forwards. Go Hawks has turned it around shockingly. You're the Go Hawks whisperer, Vibes. You also got Sussman. Timmy Z's put out a terrific, and then you got a Mafia man in a trade, one of the better goal scorers over the last couple seasons. You also get Brian Adors-Liz coming down from the NHL. He's a solid player. And then I like a couple of the defensemen as well. I think CJD, the professor, is a phenomenal player. Cholesterol Bomb's not bad either.
Yeah.
And then Pitcher Swag is a solid player. And then looking at the goaltending, Domi's been great all season. Arch Magnus is good, solid. He's had a kind of rough season up in the NHL. We'll see if he can, step into that backup role and really kill it. But I think this is another one of those series that has the potential to go 7. I definitely expect to see it go 6. I would, bet the mortgage on 6, but I can see it going 7.
Yeah, there's we know B Nice well as a goaltender who's been in this league for a few seasons and has been playing great hockey every season. He's struggled a little bit this year, 26-20 record with 78.4 save percentage, 3.14 goals against, 5 shutouts though on the season. So his team defense certainly has played well in front of him, and Rick Stoneman also has been very good, probably overall the better goaltender, 80.4% save percentage, 2.5 goals against, 22-8 record. But to your point, Arch and Domi, 2 very good goaltenders. Domi may be the best of the 4 that we mentioned. So, and that's debatable certainly, but I think I like Domi out of the 4 as the number 1. So, even with well-known goaltenders on the side of the Wild, I think that position, in my mind, might be a wash depending on who gets a hot hand in this one. But you mentioned some of the players up front that make a difference. On the Wild, again, Roller Pig is a guy that I know who has developed into a hell of a player. in this league now, and has been a big leader for the Wild in this one. As you mentioned, Rixer, Curlew's been around for a while. Wes has, was a rookie last year that played incredibly well in this league. Vish is somebody that on our Hershey team was a TC player who came in and played like he played with us all year long. Knew he was going to be a big player as well. So, I'll talk to the Wild side of it just because I think we can get more out of vibes from his team. I think the Wild can certainly hold their own with this one. This may be the most competitive series in this opening round vibes, and I think, I think that's, you'd like to have a walkover if possible, but having a good matchup against the Wild also helps keep your guys honed for the playoffs. And, in my mind, these guys are, they are a good matchup for your team.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team, and they're going to be tough to get rid of. At full strength now, again, I have no idea what's going to happen in terms of, ECUs and things like that, because things have been, I'm not lying when I say we've been holding on by a thread.
Right.
But that being said, in the event we were at full strength, I think that, we would take this series, but the Wild are probably the second best team in the division besides us. So they're not going to be an easy out by any stretch of the imagination. They have a really good offense. They have a substantial defense, and then A-class goaltending. So they won't be an easy out by any means.
And we finishing up here with the Western Central. Let's head over to the Western Pacific, and we will look at the stats quickly here for the San Jose Barracuda and the Ontario Reign, with the Reign leading the season series. And these teams have been going back and forth all year long in the division, in, who's first, who's second. The Reign have actually played them better, played San Jose better. The Reign, I think, may be a more consistently good team day in and day out, which in the playoffs to me is a huge bonus. I think it's incredibly helpful when you're able to have consistent play from every line. I think the Reign are able to get that. I think these, their games with San Jose probably prove that out, and their stats certainly do. Head-on shots on goal, ahead 10 minutes almost on time of attack, and the Reign have made it hard for San Jose, who initially looked like they might be able to pull away, but the Reign would not let them go the entire time. And then, of course, we know what the goals did. We'll talk about them in a minute. But this, again, another really good series. They played down the stretch as well, a couple of games. And, they just had battles between these two teams. And I can't imagine it's going to be much different than kind of what we saw in some of their late season games between these two teams. I expect a war. I don't expect this to be easy. And, a lot of firepower. The defense, to me, the defense, which one could stop the bleeding first is the one that's going to be successful. They're both two good teams that know how to bring the puck into the zone. They know how to move the puck around, and they know how to quickly pass. Fairman and Orioles have such chemistry with that ability that they are really, really tough to stop. And, that's going to be the question for San Jose. How do they deal with that line and with the other two lines for Ontario? Can they block the passing lanes? Can they keep them at the blue line? Are they going to have to set up a bit of a trap to do that? I think we're going to have to see what their strategy is when the series starts. But to me, for San Jose to be successful, they're going to have to, really make some good play on the blue line, keep Ontario out as much as possible, and when they're in the zone, clog up the middle, stop the passes. That's what they do really, really well. And to my mind, Ryan, I think San Jose can do that, but if they fail a little bit in that, they're going to find themselves behind in the series right away.
For sure. I think Ontario has two really, really two, number one lines. I like Orioles and Fairman, and whoever you put them with, they're going to do terrific. They're going to put up points. But the second one is Dangles, Zach, and then you have my boy Bottleman. Those three are, former Wild, Season 4 Wild players. I think Dangles has the potential to be a very, very good NHLer. However, he's been down in the AHL the last couple of seasons. He's a phenomenal player. Really good two-way center who can play both defense and forward. I think it's going to be tough to stop. But then again, you look at San Jose, they also have a phenomenal offense. You have Ducks fan, Jay Cap is a good player. I'm just a squid, is phenomenal. Had another really, really great season. Razor Edge can put up goals like none other. I think up front, the battle to put, goals in the back of the net, it's going to be that. I think that's where, the crux lies. Who wins the series? It's all going to be because of scoring.
This Ontario Reign team is another team that, I mean, it's vastly different from then when the season started. Like Zach and Dangles were both added, Risk was added, and the list goes on. So it's a very different team from when the season started, and some of those games early on between these two teams were played. So it's a little interesting to see how it's going to go with there. I mean, I know they played a few games coming down the stretch, but still a very different team.
Yeah, I think I think in the long run, it's this is the kind of series that I tell you what, these West games are going to be hellish for all four teams. I don't think it's going to be easy, and I think whoever comes out of these games in the West, whoever comes out of this first round, I think you have to. You have to look at what happened in the other game and say, okay, what can I exploit? Maybe there's something that those guys did that we can figure out something with and try and try and find something that's a weakness in the other team, because I don't know whoever comes out, I don't know how you're going to beat the other one. I don't know what kind of strategy you're going to have to come up with, but we've got certainly a really good series coming up with those two teams in Ontario and San Jose. But Texas, unfortunately, has a monumental task to have to deal with, and that's going to be having to deal with the Gulls, who, well, they are pretty much the word.
About the bird. Bird's a winner. Well, a bird is a winner. Well, a bird is a winner.
Just doing that for my friends over in San Diego. They wanted to hear their theme song, and that is their saying right now. The bird is the word, and the Gulls are the team that nobody seems to be able to beat now for several weeks, and they have been tremendously successful. Texas, as we saw last night, Vibes, they're playing really good hockey right now, but man, I tell you what, it is going to be a tall order for them to make everything happen well in this series, to have any kind of prayer. As we quickly start to look at the numbers, they aren't necessarily that bad. Time on attack, shots, certainly down a bit on that one. Taking too many penalties on the Texas side, but it's been the Gulls 4-1 against this Texas team this series. And, to me, Vibes, Texas has to do sort of what we saw last night against Ontario. They've got to be able to keep them off of their game. And again, what Ontario does really well, I think the Gulls do even better, which is moving the puck, spreading the offense, getting it to the open man when they can as quickly as possible, and then getting shots on the net.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for scaring the shit out of me when you played that song, because I didn't know where the hell it was coming from. I thought that maybe I clicked on something or whatever, so thanks for starting.
Probably should have warned you about that. My fault.
It's okay. But yeah, I mean, this is this is a San Diego team again where, a lot of these season series, it's hard to even really get a drop on it because the teams are such excuse me, the teams are so vastly different. And that's another case here. I mean, you got a bunch of draft picks that came down moving towards the end of the season for the Gulls. And, I mean, they've just been red hot. So it comes down to how does Texas stop that? And kind of like you said, similar to how they played them the other night, is they just need to slow things down and see if they can take the life out of the Gulls. You know, you choke the life out of them and see if you can pop a few. And right now, that seems to be the only way that anyone's going to beat this Gulls team.
And as we start to talk about this game and about this series, we bring in Deer Hunter and Matt Sabb to join us on this, although it looks like Deer Hunter may have just dropped out. Anyway, Matt's with us. And, again, thanks for joining us tonight, my friend. Congratulations on a heck of an ending to a season. And, you know, Texas is, again, as we know with this entire Western Pacific, Texas is no pushover. They certainly played incredibly well last night. And while they couldn't get past their first game, they were able to beat the rain and get themselves in the playoffs. How do you keep your guys, and, you know, Deer Hunter is back now, how do you keep your guys from looking past Texas and worrying about if they're going to take on Ontario or San Jose?
Well, I mean, we all, like, our whole team knows that Texas is a great team, both sides of the ice, defensively and offensively. Never take them lightly because they could definitely beat any team in the league at any given point. So that's one of the reasons that our team doesn't look past the first round, thinking that we're going to beat them 4-0 or 3-1 or whatever.
Yeah, playoffs is a whole new season.
Exactly.
Talk about what you've seen from your division and, you know, a little bit about what the competition's been like all season. We see the scores, we see the one-goal games, we see the fact that the standings have been going up and down for those first three spots. Is it as competitive as we all picture it, or is it even more cutthroat than we think?
Dear, I'll let you take this one first.
Oh, yeah, definitely competitive. I mean, look at all the games. They're all really, really tight games, good played games. It's taking everything to get the W.
I completely agree with that. Considering the last couple games we've had in the division against Texas, or whether it's San Jose or even Ontario, they've all been close games, one-goal games, maybe two-goal games at the most.
Yeah, all three of them. We went to overtime this weekend.
Exactly. So our division is definitely a tough division.
What's your key, you know, focus for Texas? What is it that you need to do against these guys? You know, what do you think is the real key to the series for you?
Keep playing our game. Keep playing
That's
the way we have.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Don't stop with what's working.
Yeah.
How well does everyone on your team know their role?
Oh, really well.
Yeah, our team knows exactly what they're supposed to do, what their role is. Like we don't point out who's the first line, who's second line. We just all know that our whole team is like we're all a first line in our heads.
Oh yeah.
We try not to single out anybody as like a third liner or a first liner, and I think that's an advantage we have to keep our players.
Something we've done all season too. You don't put anybody down because somebody might take it offensively, saying they're third line. Well, we got three first lines.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the final question I have, and I'll open it up to Ryan and Vibes if they have anything for you guys as well. But the final question I have is: you're riding this winning streak, and you know, we hear about professional teams who are on a streak and whatever pressure it brings upon them to stay on that streak. You take the streak into the playoffs. Do your guys feel any sense of more pressure on them because of that, or is it the playoffs and that's all they care about at this point?
Well, we've just been taking it one game at a time, and I don't think it's too much pressure on us. I mean, like I said, playoffs are a whole new season. And I know the streak is nice, but they can't add on now. It's done. Now it's playoff time.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, for sure, man. Playoffs is a whole new season in my mind. It's like as if we're all starting off completely fresh, 0-0, no wins, no losses. So
Yeah.
we gotta keep playing our game and keep winning games one at a time.
Well, listen, guys, we're going to let you go, but it's a heck of a string right now for you. You guys probably playing the best hockey of anyone at this point. Best luck to you in the playoffs, and we expect a lot of fireworks coming out of the Western Pacific, and I'm sure all 4 teams are going to show that this week coming up.
I got something.
Okay, go ahead.
I got something for them.
Sure.
So you talk about you don't got no first line and stuff like that. It's all fine and good, but come on, who's your first line?
Everybody on our team.
You have to have a first line. Who's your Game 7 lineup?
I ain't spilling the beans.
You don't have a first line. Who's your third line?
If we don't have one.
You have to have a third line.
I guess if it comes down to Game 7, you'll find out that.
Okay, if it comes to Game 7.
Well, I tell you what. I tell you a couple of guys who I got to see a couple of weeks back, the first time I really got a good look at your team, is Max and Hall. I'm really impressed with the way those guys have played. And, I hadn't seen too much from them. But, amongst all the other names that we see on this team, besides the fact that you two guys are putting up great numbers, they're doing incredibly well. JV Dank, I play for Keeps, right? Complex is playing incredibly well. But these two guys, I feel like they're the ones who have helped put this team over the top to the point where I agree with you. I think you've got 3 really good lines that can beat anybody.
Yeah, definitely.
And that pickup of hit.
Second line? No?
I think they're a team full of fourth liners. I think that's what it's come down to.
100%.
You don't have a second line either.
We don't have lines. We're all one team.
You don't even use lines.
No.
Are you following the rules? Are you at least following the rules?
Of course.
I hope so.
Hey, everybody, 8 games for Carm for us, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I think we got that finally straightened out. Well, listen, I'll tell you what, we'll let you guys go, and we'll talk about your series. And listen, best of luck. Thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Birds of
Thank
word.
you.
All right. There's Matt and Deer Hunter helping us out tonight, giving us the scoop on their team. Well, not really a scoop, obviously, because Vibes grilled them like they were in a
Can't give us anything. What do you mean scoop? What scoop?
you grilled them like they were in a police precinct, getting questioned behind the mirrored glass, and they gave up nothing. So, but whatever it is that they have or don't have, I guess they feel like they've got a team, and that might sound a bit sappy. But they might be the good guy, white hat wearing kind of crew, which is like a 180 from your group Vibes. A bunch of guys wearing black cowboy hats and spitting tobacco down the street. It's a very different team than what you guys got going. I guess that means there are different ways you can get to success. These guys, to me though, they just have an overabundance of talent. And when that happens, that's why a streak happens to me in this league. You've got so many good players, you don't have a weak line. I thought Stockton had that last season. I still do think they had it last season. I think the San Diego team might be even better overall.
I think one of the things that puts them over the top is if you look at their goaltending. I mean, OMG Price is the backup. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Sure.
Trash clown.
Dare I ask them who their number 1 goallie is?
I think it's got to be Trash, right?
Because
they don't have one.
I don't know Vibes. We've seen some games with Price lately. We saw him in overtime yesterday. In that first game, he was making game-saving toe saves. I think he might be back in form. him and Trash Clown together on that team with everything else that's going on, I don't know how you bet against them. Quite honestly.
No, I mean, it's a good tandem, and neither one's the starter, so, who the hell knows?
There are no starters. They're just players.
There's no starters.
You heard them.
They're all
Bird is the
players.
word. The bird is the word.
The bird is the word. Do we go back to the beginning and pick these? What do you think?
Yeah, we got to
Yeah,
pick them,
we
right?
can do picks, right? Is anyone keeping track so I can hold Vibes accountable?
Well, I would suggest
number
you.
one, I put them on the website, but I'm changing them all. So
Well, when they start playing, they get locked in. So you do everything you need to do to try and keep us off the radar with you. But let's
most of them.
let's start going through these, and we could start off with the Hershey Bears and the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. Ryan, do you have a pick for that?
Yeah, I'd go Hershey in 5.
Hershey in 5. I want to say that's probably about where I put them as well. And I don't remember if I have to look for my picks. But while I look for my picks, Vibes, you tell us what you picked.
I gotta try and find out whether or not Hershey's got a first line. I'm taking Hershey in 6. I feel like the Sound Tigers are good enough to push it to a 6. They're good enough to get 2 wins. I think they could maybe get it to a 7, but ultimately I'm taking Hershey in 6.
And according to my picks, I have Hershey in 6 as well. Springfield and Hartford, 7th in the East versus 6th in the East. At least that's what their numbers are saying. That's inaccurate. Anyway, the Wolfpack, who were in 2nd in this division against the 3rd place, 2 points behind Hartford, Springfield Thunderbirds. Let's start with Vibes first, if you're ready for this.
Yeah, sure. I took Hartford on the site. But then I gave it a little bit of contemplation and thought it over, and it came to me how much Hartford sucks. So I'm actually going to take Springfield in 5.
I'll go next. I have, as much as I was a Hartford lover earlier, I have to say I'm impressed with the way Springfield is playing. I think they have everything running. They will take this in 6 games.
I think it's going to be Hartford in 6.
All right. I think that may be one of the tough ones to call, Ryan, quite honestly.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I got to support my guys. They are the AHL team to the NHL team I was on, so I played quite a bit of games. Got to support them. I still think that they have stellar goaltending, and they'll pull it out.
It's a tough one to pick, though. It's like 2 short buses playing bumper cars with no seatbelts, so it's tough.
Well said.
The next playoff matchup is Utica and Toronto. I love Utica as a spoiler. I've been saying it for weeks. I'm still picking Toronto in 5.
It's a safe bet.
Same thing. I'd go Toronto in 5. I think it'll be quick.
I have Toronto in 5 as well.
Senators.
That we all agree.
Yeah, that's amazing. Senators and Crunch, 2 really good teams. As much as I like the Crunch, I'm still impressed with what the Senators have been able to do. I think they have to win it at home in Game 6, and I'm going to pick them, the Senators, in 6.
I'll go, I think it's going to be Syracuse in 6.
I have Syracuse in 6.
On the other side, in the West, the Western Central, it's the Griffins and the Monsters. Ryan, you go first.
I'm going to go Monsters in 7. It's not going to be easy for them. However, I think they have enough talent up front and good enough goaltending that they'll pull it out.
Vibes?
I got the Griffins in 6. Cinderella gets caught behind the ball with her pants down giving a blowjob. So, Monsters lose, Griffins in 6.
Once again, I have to agree with Vibes. As much as of a Cleveland fanboy as I propose to be, I like what the Griffins have been doing, and with what's going on with Cleveland right now, not just a loss of players, but a loss of composure from what I'm seeing, I have to pick the Griffins in 6 as well. The other game in that Western Central, Vibes is going to hold off.
Leave me alone.
On picking this. I'm going to make him feel good, I think. And, again, I think this is going to be one of the more fun series to look at this
You want
round.
to be my Cinderella, Sibsy?
I'm picking the Moose in 7. Ryan is a former Iowa Wild player. Let's see who he picks.
I'm actually going to go Iowa in 7. I think they got a good team. I think they have terrific goaltending. Not saying that the Moose don't. I just think they get the edge.
Right.
And also because I like, making Vibes a little bit scared because I got all these professional choices here.
And also, your opinion is based on some research, as opposed to what me and Vibes are giving out right now.
A little bit.
We're just winging them out there.
Yeah, pretty much. Syracuse and Ontario. I'm sorry, not Syracuse. San Jose and Ontario. It's you know what? Wow. I still, even though the Reign, I think, have a more consistent team, I think somehow Syracuse is going to try and take this in 6, not have to face that Fairman and Orioles grouping in a Game 7. I think we saw what Texas was able to do to Ontario last night. That got me a little concerned about the Reign and whether or not they can stay with San Jose. I'm going to take the Barracuda in 6. Well, let's
just so you know, I mean, I may change literally all of my picks by like 12 o'clock tonight.
I'm going to go with what's on the site, not what you say on the show.
I'll come and let you know, but I may change my picks multiple
Just so
times.
we're all aware, I am writing down who everyone chooses. So Vibes, you're on the record.
All right. Well, if I got to change, I'm coming to you because I am not completely locked into this. I did not sign.
I'll tell you what. If you don't change it on the website, I am not counting it. I'm sorry, it's not.
I'll change it on the site. No,
All right.
I'll make sure I change it on the site. It's just
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. In fact, I think I might have changed my mind on one already. I don't know. Anyway,
apologizing.
Give me the
goddamn game.
Give me the Barracuda in this one. I'll take the Barracuda in 6.
I'm going to take Ontario in 7. I think it's going to be a good series either way.
All right. Well, there you have it. A lot of non-experts giving you their opinion on what's going to happen. I think if there's one thing I know for sure about these most of these opening series, I would not be surprised if I'm absolutely wrong. I think we got
do the
a lot
final
of
series. We didn't even talk about the final series.
You want to get that far? You want to get past the first round?
No. We didn't even talk about the goals. We didn't do the goals.
We didn't.
Nope.
No, we didn't do the goals. Okay. Goals. Goals in, I think, I want to say, I might have said 5. I got to take a look at my picks again.
Yeah, I'm going to go goals in 5.
You ready?
Yeah.
This is why Vibes, well, I don't make the big bucks. This is why Vibes doesn't get paid to do this at all. But this is where I make my virtual money. I am taking the Texas Stars in 7.
So that when you're wrong, nobody's going to remember. But if you're right, you're going to gloat for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stars in 7.
I know you bastard. I know exactly why you're doing what you're doing.
Stars in 7.
You know what? It would surprise me. But after watching them play a couple of games last night, and I think they're a better team they're definitely a better team than I thought they were. Let me just say that. And they got some good goaltending last night as well that helped them. So, they may be ready to take on a Gulls team. If Texas was playing the Reign after what I saw last night, I would pick that as being an upset. I think that could possibly happen. The Gulls, I just don't think so.
They're a complete and total buzzsaw right now. I just don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen. Any final thoughts, Ryan, from you on this?
What about a cup winner? You guys want to go? Come on, take a cup winner.
You want a cup winner now?
Come on, why not?
I'll go San Diego. They sweep the playoffs and win the 16 straight games.
Sweep the playoffs. Whoa.
That would be
What's
what,
that,
20,
that'd be a 39.
10, 33, yeah, 39. 39 game win streak, really?
That'd be amazing.
That's my call right now.
That's your final answer.
That'd be amazing.
Completely sarcastic, but yes, if I had to make a cup prediction now, that would be it.
I love my Bears, but the Gulls. I've been saying the Gulls for a couple of weeks now. I have a hard time believing anybody beats them right now.
You guys have both taken the Gulls.
Mm-hmm. If they play the Moose, they are absolutely sweeping the Moose.
All right. Okay.
Of course,
fine.
the Moose have to get past the Wild first, and then we'll see what happens.
Anyway, I am going to abstain from picking a cup winner.
I think we all know who you choose, by the way.
You have no guts, do you?
Well, I'm going to abstain from picking a cup winner.
You have no guts. None whatsoever.
If you could read between the lines, I'm going to abstain from picking a cup winner.
I got you. Okay.
Wink, wink, wink.
Wink, wink. All right. Final thoughts before we go off the air for a few minutes and then come back on for the All-Star game.
Yeah, how long are we doing this show?
I suggest you do what I'm going to do, which is go down, get a couple of shots of bourbon, and have some fun with this.
Yeah.
That's probably the right thing to do.
Probably.
Ryan, playoffs. Just like a general final thought on what you expect here, this first round at least.
I think we'll see all the top teams get through. I don't think that there's going to be all that many upsets. I think there may be one big one. I'm not really sure where it's going to come from, but I can see it happening. Some of the teams, 4 seeds, are very talented. We'll see, how it goes coming up here.
Vibes, as usual. We're going to let you spew your final Jerry Springer-like.
No, I'm actually going to be really boring this time.
Okay.
I could only hope that my team gets good availability through the playoffs because we are the best team in the league, but I don't think that our availability is going to be there, and could be a short playoffs for the Moose, but we'll see.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for joining me again. We'll be, I think we'll be back. Ryan, you gonna stick around for the game in a little bit?
I gotta go here.
You gotta go,
but yeah,
good choice.
So I won't be able to do the show. But
all right, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it, Ryan. Vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll see you in a little bit. Go take a pit stop and give yourself a chance to rest for a little bit here before we get back on the air.
Alrighty.
All right, folks, that does it for us. T-Sibs, Vibes, Ryan, oh my God, there. With Thursday night, God, I am totally out of it. AHLPSN this week, saying so long. We will talk to you in about, 10, 15, 20 minutes. We're going to bring you the All-Star game here shortly. Stick around.